Now, I mean, we were talking to Jim Thistle a few months ago, who you and I both worked with, a news director at Channel 5. He called you the Walter Cronkite of Boston television news. The question being now, are we beyond that? Do we not want that anymore? I called you the backbone of Channel 5. Are we at the point where we don't want somebody who holds that sort of stature and position because we want everybody to more or less be the same? So you're not tuning in for one person, you're tuning in for what that station represents.
I don't know. I mean, in some ways it's one and the same, and what I represent for Channel 5 and what Channel 5 was, I think we're one and the same. You know, I look at, for example, at 6:30 in the network news, I really like to watch Charlie Gibson. Why do I like to watch him? First of all, I'm very comfortable watching him. I like his approach, his style of anchoring. He's easy to understand. I happen to have known him for a long time, so I know that he's intelligent. I know that he's extremely well informed. And he has a lovely way of putting a story in perspective. When he interviews someone in a live situation, he asks intelligent questions. It's not about him. Yeah. I think that's a really good way to put it, too. So I watch ABC News for Charlie Gibson. Now, maybe I'm unusual, although the ratings at ABC are phenomenal. And ABC, to its credit, has tailored that newscast to him, just the way they tailored the newscast to the people before him, most notably Peter Jennings. So, you know, that's me. I don't know. Do I represent a lot of people or a few people? I really don't know. But, you know, it's human nature, too, I think, Emily. I think you'd agree. There's only so much graphics and music and impersonal ways of getting news. You go on the online now, you go for a reason. I don't go to meet you or Charlie or anybody else. I go to get that information about something I heard, or more importantly, I open the page to see what I don't know, what I wouldn't even know to ask. And then I want some perspective. Then I want to go to a person. It's a combination, you know, though, for me.
I suspect you're like me. I still watch a lot of local television news, not so much in the morning. I watch a lot of the evening. If I can, when I'm there, I'd still like to watch a network newscast. I have perceptions about what I think is good, but what do you think is still good or even better about local news and network news?
Well, the technology certainly allows us to go anywhere, anytime, and bring people instant, the moment as it's happening. To a greater degree than ever. We were able to do that when we had microwaves, but you know, now you can do it much better with satellite equipment. And thinking, and not all tragedies. I mean, you know, when the Red Sox win the pennant, and you're there, and you're in the locker room, and all this fun stuff. So there's that. At Channel 5, I'm really proud of the Investigates unit. That's solid stuff. Team 5 investigates, and those kids work really hard. Not all kids, but those
I should give a nod to Joe Brigantino at Channel 4 too, who also does good work.
Absolutely, and that's hard work because you have to. Investigative work it takes time, and you really don't have time. So you're under that team is under the gun all the time to get it right. You know, if you can investigate and expose something, you better darn well have it right. So they're under a lot of pressure, and I think overall they've done a really good job with that. What else? I don't know. What are you thinking of?
Well, I mean, I still think, especially on the network level, that they bring me to places I can't go myself.
Sure.
And you know, I saw Mark Litke the other day for a piece in Africa. I mean, it was just there we were. And, you know, people like to criticize the network newscasts and say that they've splintered off and go to all these other places. I still say, and I always say this when I go to speak, hey, when I tune in the network newscast at 6:33, I know I've missed what somebody decided was the most important news story of the day, and I feel at a loss. When I turn in at 6:33 at CNN, I have no idea where I am. It's always sort of this, you know, continuous.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were just talking about local news. Yeah, the national still. Well, we don't travel like that anymore.
We don't travel. We don't travel.
We don't travel like we did in the past because of money. It costs money.
I think some business reporting has gotten better on the local. Well, at least they cover business or business angles anyway, which didn't used to get covered, and no one cared about that.
Well, and they can cover it better. We actually, years ago, I think before you were the news director, had a business reporter.
Yeah, we did. No, I was there.
Were you there then?
Yeah.
But he didn't have all of the bells and whistles to make it television.
True.
He didn't have all the computer graphics and things. And so you go, oh, yawn, you know. You can't read a newspaper on television and expect somebody to be interested. You got to have the pictures and the graphics to go along with it. So you're right. So you can do better. What we used to call newspaper stories you can do on TV now because of the graphics.
And when you go back and you read a list of the stories yourself, I mean, you really had a front and center seat to everything. I was there for part of that time, but the Queen, the Pope, I mean, Charles Stewart, of course the Red Sox, even silly stories, the Aquatine Hunger Force, for heaven's sakes. I mean, they're all things that kind of our city, our state, our area sort of grew and changed with. I mean, you know, when you look at that, I mean, asking what stands out is sort of a mundane question, but I mean, when you look at each one of those, what kind of a memory comes to your mind?
Oh, I think overall a sense of community. I think that's the thing I've loved the most about my job. I love getting information, or you're talking about the big things, the big events and the happenings, happy and not. I love that. I loved bringing my neighbors, our community, our fellow citizens into our tent of information and making it work for them. And I miss that a lot. I know I'm going to miss that. Well, we don't do a lot of that kind of stuff. I mentioned to my colleagues last night, you know, even something like the funeral of an important person, maybe like Tip O'Neill. We did that live. I remember I was on vacation and somebody called and said, we know you're going to want to anchor this. And you bet, if I had come from Timbuktu to do that. Or when Rose Kennedy, and we brought Doris Kearns Goodwin in, who, you know, wrote the Kennedys and the Fitzgeralds. And I think Clark Booth was part of that, and Chad and myself. And we parked outside the church on a little makeshift table. And we were on the air for like 4 hours. You think a funeral? Well, it wasn't just a funeral.
Yeah, it was a whole community.
It was a history. We gave a history of Massachusetts' arguably most famous family.
You don't think that would happen now with even a Ted Kennedy?
4 hours on the air live?
No.
No.
Wouldn't happen.
I don't think so.
So you think this is all financial driven? I mean, I have to ask you again. I mean, is this a corporate move? I mean, what is this about? What is the changing face of local news about? Is it all about somebody counting the money who's part of the ownership of the station?
Well, if you speak to the management, they tell you that they're not making the money that they made before.
That's probably true.
So in the, you know, how much less? I don't know. I'm not privy to those numbers, but it's enough to make the budgets very tight, to cut back on the travel that we've done, on you know, any of the little niceties we might have had before. So you're stretching a dollar as best you can, and what they're telling us is that's the budget. We don't make as much money. We've got to do with less. I have no reason not to believe them. You know, what people might not realize, especially the young people might be watching, is there was a time when television news didn't make money. So it was the thing you did to get your license renewed,
right,
you know, your ascertainment of community needs and so forth. And years back, in fact, the early years of Channel 5 gave free time to candidates.
Yeah, remember that.
And then
now you can't give it away. They don't want it.
Well, then we were challenged in court because I think it was the Reagan campaign that did it, but I might be wrong about which presidential campaign. But then what happened is news became the moneymaker for a television station, and suddenly, you know, all the suits paid attention. You couldn't get away with what you did before, meaning as experimental, perhaps. So, yeah, it's different.
All right, so when are you going to launch your next project?
Well,
tell us a little bit more about that.
I've been working on this for a couple of years. I guess the best way to say this is, you know, there was a time when, you know, you got to be 65, whatever job you had, you probably were in the same job for 30 years or whatever, and you retired and you fished for a couple of years or played golf, and then you died. Well, lucky us. You know, they're telling us that we're going to live longer, maybe 95-ish. So if you're only 50, you have 45 more years to live. Or if you're 60, you have 35 more. You can't fish for 40 years. So it's a phenomenal gift to our generation that we can look forward, you know, hopefully, knock on wood, to, if you have your health, to another endeavor, whatever that is. So my hope is to create a community for boomers, but I can see that it could be people younger and older as well, who are saying to themselves, so what do I do now? How do I live? And how do I make a little extra money? Because I didn't save enough for 40 years. Who does on a salary? So I want to gather that group, people who are happy in their lives, who are successful in their lives, who had good careers and who are just like me. Okay, I want to move on. You know, I'm done. I'm not done.
Sign me up.
Living. I got my first customer.
All right, Natalie
so hopefully by the
Jacobson.
end of the year we'll launch it, and now I can give it my full
Right.
attention.